Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you very much, Professor Machista, for this introduction, and to the Graduate Institute for Policy Studies for giving me this opportunity to speak to you about the priorities for EU diplomacy in East Asia. Before I go into that, I would like to begin by setting out the wider context, how we see trends in and around the region, and how these affect our policy options and choices. The starting point for any discussion of this type, of course, has to be a recognition that the rise, or rather the re-emergence of Asia, is one of the megatrends shaping our world. Asia is home to the world's fastest growing economies. It is experiencing rapidly changing political dynamics, and as a result, it has rising global significance and influence. As Japan knows well, growth rates around the region are of course affected by the global economic slowdown. But still, and in comparative terms, this region is full of energy and confidence. On the back of a decade and more of producing ever more impressive statistics on growth, trade, investment, science and technology. You know the list. The key driving force behind all this has been that ever larger numbers of people in Asia have been able to satisfy that core human aspiration, to shape their own lives. The rise and changing shape of Asia is a systemic development, and it is quite literally changing our world. Since 1945, the role of the US in the region has been crucial, ensuring overall stability and security, including through its alliance with Japan. Recently, there's been much talk about the so-called Obama pivot, or now the rebalancing of US attention and resources from the wider Middle East to the Asia-Pacific. The reasons behind this rebalancing are obvious and have intrinsic logic. The overall stated aim, as you know, is to strengthen regional and multilateral structures to manage the big political and security changes that are underway, including the embedding of a rising China into a regional and global sets of norms and institutions. China is, of course, a crucial partner for all of us. Its growth rate has been phenomenal and well documented. Its regional and global impact is rising in tandem. As we speak, a new leadership in China is settling in, and it will have to grapple with a number of pressing internal challenges: corruption, pollution, growth, expectation management, to mention just a few. Elsewhere in the region, too, there have recently been important leadership changes. Here in Japan, of course, but also South Korea. And important elections are set to come in Pakistan, India, and Indonesia. So the overall landscape in Asia is changing fast, and we need to factor these changes into our policy deliberations. We all know that Asia has long contained some of the world's critical potential flashpoints: the Korean Peninsula, India-Pakistan, several territorial and maritime disputes, including those in the South China Sea and East Asia. What we are seeing, unfortunately, now is a rise in tensions everywhere. I could mention the latest missile test by the DPRK, or indeed the suspicion today of a nuclear test. Deadly border skirmishes between India and Pakistan last month. And almost every day there are new developments in the East and South China Sea. Arms sales across the region are rising, which is generally not a huge sign of people's confidence in overall regional security. It is significant that last year, for the first time, defense spending in Asia exceeded that of Europe. The striking thing in Asia are two parallel truths. Asia is characterized by deep economic integration in terms of production and supply chains, but also by deep underlying and indeed growing political and security tensions. To this, one must add the absence of an agreed and strong set of rules, norms, and institutions to manage these growing tensions. Nationalism is on the rise. Regional integration is under pressure, starting with ASEAN. Some point to the growing risks of a bipolar regional dynamic and a trend where security tensions are spilling over into the economic realm. Here in Japan, people of course remember how tensions last year with China over the East China Sea affected business in terms of car sales, flights, and so forth. All of this directly affects European interests, economically through our trade and investment relations. As you know, the EU is the world's biggest market and trading bloc. What fewer people know is that Asia has now surpassed NAFTA to become the EU's main trading partner, accounting for a third of total trade, and this figure continues to grow. China alone is the EU's second business trading partner after the United States. Japan and ASEAN as a group are in the top 5. In terms of investment, arguably a better indicator of health and the significance of an economic relationship, more than 26% of EU outward investment is going to Asia, while inward investment from Asia to Europe is growing fast. So Asia matters to Europe, and will do so even more in the future. In economic terms, we know that recovery at home depends on the ability to harness growth and to open new markets, many of which are in Asia. With South Korea, we have concluded a free trade agreement now in place since over a year, and which has boosted trade by several billion euro. We've just concluded a similarly ambitious FTA with Singapore, while talks are ongoing with India, Vietnam, and Malaysia. We are about to launch negotiations for an FTA with Japan and are in an exploratory phase with Thailand and Indonesia. But Asia also matters to Europe in political and security terms. We have 4 of our most important strategic partners in the region. The engagement of the biggest actors in Asia will be essential if we are to tackle global challenges such as climate change, piracy, non-proliferation, freedom of navigation in the South China Sea with 50% of world trade in tonnage passing through, Afghanistan after 2014. All these issues and challenges affect vital EU interests. So it is logical that the EU is building up its engagement in and with Asia. For the truth is that Europe also matters to Asia. Asia's future growth depends on access to our markets. The euro crisis has actually underlined our basic interdependence and our shared interest in promoting a global recovery. Despite the slow recovery of its economy from the financial crisis, the EU remains the largest economy in the world, with per capita GDP of 25,000 euros per head for its 500 million consumers. That represents an economy worth 12.6 trillion euros. Only the United States, at 11.5 trillion euros, is in the same league. The EU and its member states also remain the largest overall donor of official development aid, with around 53 billion euros per year. As Asia contains some of the world's poorest and most vulnerable countries, the enduring importance of Europe as a development partner is clear. Now, it is true that we as the EU don't have a leading role on the headline hard security issues, given the absence of major military assets or bases in the region. But in a way, this is perhaps also an advantage. The region doesn't necessarily need another hard security player. Our value added is different. We are seen as engaged but not threatening, active but without a geopolitical agenda. Perhaps the greatest value of the EU is to act as a principal champion of a rules-based cooperative security. For all its faults, and I will admit that we do have some, the EU is seen by many as a model for reconciliation and regional integration. The single market remains a huge pole of attraction. We have steadily enlarged a rule-based community of democracies from 6 to 12 to 15 to 25 to 27 and soon to be 28 when Croatia joins as the 28th member in July of this year. Our inclusive approach to democracy, human rights and the rule of law strikes a chord with the growing number of democracies, from established ones like Japan and India to newer ones like Korea and Indonesia. It was, I think, in recognition of what the EU has contributed to peace, reconciliation and reunification of the continent that we were awarded the Nobel Prize for Peace last year. I note that we weren't awarded the Nobel Prize for Economics, but I'm confident we'll get that the year after next. I also think that as the EU, we have a good track record of innovative, integrated strategies on the new security issues that are increasingly dominating the international agenda. The way we operate internally and hence project externally is perhaps not very glamorous. Our rhetoric is rarely stirring. We don't do shock and awe, but that's also the point. We do things others sometimes find difficult, and we do things in a different way. Before comprehensive strategies, or the 3 Ds, defense, diplomacy, development, became fashionable, we were already doing it. Take our approach on piracy, where we not only have a very successful naval operation, Atalanta, off the coast of Somalia, but are active both on and offshore with training, capacity building, judicial reform, working with regional partners, and development assistance. Everyone knows that in the next 10 years we'll have to spend much more attention on problems of scarcity, partly driven by climate change, energy, and natural resources, including rare earths. And these will be much debated and in some cases contested, especially where access is politicized. Cybersecurity is another obvious growth area, I fear. For none of these is there a military solution, nor is it a question of just getting the markets to work. Neither will traditional development policy be the answer. The problems are more complex and more interconnected. They require more creative thinking about security, bringing together different constellations of countries, organizations, and people. Whatever weaknesses we may have, this is a core EU strength. So framing these kind of integrated solutions forms a growing part of our engagement with and in Asia. Doing things differently, addressing security challenges the modern way. If this is the bigger backdrop and the overall thrust of EU engagement, allow me to run quickly through some of the more concrete things the EU has been doing recently. For us, 2012 was a year in which there was a step change in the EU's engagement in and with the Asia-Pacific region, both in terms of presence and in terms of policies. Key milestones included an unprecedented number of visits by the Presidents of the European Council and Commission, President Van Rompuy and President Barroso, but also High Representative Cathy Ashton, who was in the region 5 times in 1 year, and various European commissioners. 4 bilateral Asian summits, including 2 with China in 1 year, but also with Korea and India. With Japan, we will have the first summit of 2013 with an Asian partner, hopefully in the next month or so. The ASEM summit last November was attended by more than 35 heads of state and government, thus proving the enduring importance both Asians and Europeans attach to their informal dialogue. The High Representative Cathy Ashton chaired the Brunei Ministerial, charting a new course for EU-ASEAN relations, both more ambitious and more political at the same time. At the same occasion, she signed the EU's accession to the Treaty of Amity and Cooperation and represented the EU at the ASEAN Regional